The boardroom was tense, the atmosphere thick with uncertainty. Sarah Donovan, CEO of ApexTech, stood at the head of the polished mahogany table, a faint sheen of sweat on her forehead. The meeting had started like any other, smooth, efficient, just as it had been for the past 5 years. But something was different today. Something had shifted. The news had just hit the wires. A leak. Confidential information about the company's new AI technology had been exposed to the press. A breathless report claimed that ApexTech was about to face a lawsuit from a rival company, one that could cripple their market position. Sarah's mind raced as she looked across the room at her most trusted executives, each one more silent than the last. "How did this happen?" she asked, her voice trembling with controlled fury. John, the chief operating officer, was the first to speak, his face a mask of concern. "We're investigating it, Sarah. But it looks like someone on the inside sold us out." Sarah's heart sank. "We trusted them," she muttered, her eyes scanning the room. "Whoever did this, they'll pay." The gravity of the betrayal hit her like a wave. She was no longer in control, and she knew she couldn't afford to let this scandal take her down. "I want answers. Now," she said, her voice firm. "Find out who did this, or I will." Sarah stormed out of the boardroom, her mind racing with thoughts of betrayal and vengeance. She could feel the eyes of her executives on her back, each one uncertain, fearful of what came next. The hum of the building felt distant, almost surreal, as she moved toward her office. The door swung open with force, and she slammed it behind her, locking herself in. Her assistant, Rachel, stood by her desk, looking at her with a mixture of concern and curiosity. "Sarah, not now, Rachel," Sarah snapped, her voice tight. Rachel flinched but didn't speak. Sarah walked over to her desk, gripping the edge as she took deep breaths to calm herself. "Who could have done this to me?" she whispered under her breath. Her thoughts were interrupted by her phone buzzing. An anonymous email had just arrived, its subject line reading, "Trusting the wrong people." With trembling fingers, Sarah opened it. The email contained a list of names, some of her closest allies, and a cryptic message. "The game has changed. The ones you trusted the most are the ones who will bring you down." Her heart skipped a beat. This was no random leak. Someone inside her company was orchestrating her downfall. The next morning, Sarah met with her closest allies, her trusted CFO, James, and her senior VP of operations, Natalie. They sat across from her in her office, the tension in the air palpable. James was the first to speak, his voice calm but cautious. "Sarah, we've been looking into the leak, but we don't have much to go on yet. The timing of the lawsuit is too perfect. Someone's been setting this up for weeks." Natalie leaned forward, her expression serious. "We need to act fast. If we don't, we could lose everything. Our investors, our clients, the board." Sarah's gaze hardened as she looked at both of them. "I need answers. Who's behind this?" she demanded. James shifted uncomfortably. "We think it might be someone inside, someone close to you." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. "Someone close to me?" she repeated, her mind racing through the faces of those she trusted. "Who?" The investigation began in earnest. Sarah had instructed James and Natalie to comb through every internal communication, every contract, every meeting note to find a clue. Meanwhile, she had a plan of her own. She needed to confront those she trusted most. The first meeting was with John, the CEO, the man she had relied on more than anyone. He had always been by her side, until now. "John, I need you to explain something to me," Sarah said, her voice icy. "I don't trust anyone in this building anymore. Tell me, what do you know about the leak?" John's face faltered for just a second, but he recovered quickly. "I don't know anything about it, Sarah," he said, his voice steady. "But I'll do whatever I can to help fix it." Sarah studied him carefully, her eyes narrowing. She could feel the lies beneath the surface, but she couldn't place them just yet. "I hope so," she replied coldly. "Because if you're involved in this, there's nowhere you can hide." The walls were closing in. The investigation revealed that John had been the one to initiate several meetings with competitors, meetings that were never reported. Sarah's suspicions had been confirmed, but she still needed the final piece of the puzzle. The anonymous email had mentioned trusting the wrong people, but who else could it be? Late one night, Sarah sat alone in her office, staring at the financial records spread across her desk. Her phone buzzed with a message, "Meet me at midnight. The truth will be revealed." Her stomach turned. She knew who it was, and she knew this was the moment that everything would change. The clock struck midnight, and Sarah found herself standing outside a dark, empty building, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew this meeting would expose everything. Her phone buzzed again with a single line of text, "Come inside." She hesitated only for a moment before pushing open the door. Inside, the faint hum of fluorescent lights buzzed in the background. A shadowy figure stood in the corner, his face obscured by the dim light. "I knew you'd show up," a voice echoed from the shadows. It was John. Sarah's blood ran cold. "Why, John?" she demanded, her voice shaking with fury. "Why betray me?" John stepped forward, his face hardened with resolve. "Because it was never about you, Sarah," he said, his tone low and calm. "You're just a pawn in a much bigger game. I did what I had to do to survive, and now, you're out of time." The weight of his words hit her like a brick. "What do you mean?" Sarah whispered, her throat dry. "Who's behind this?" John took a step closer, his cold eyes locking onto hers. "You think you can control everything, don't you?" he said, his voice tinged with bitterness. "You trust people like me, people who will do anything to climb the ladder, and then you wonder why you're falling." Sarah's heart raced, her fingers trembling with rage. "You're lying," she spat. "You've been with me from the beginning. You helped build this company." John gave a humorless chuckle. "I helped you, yes, but I also helped myself. Don't you get it? This company, this empire you built, was always going to be taken down. And you made it easy." His words hit Sarah like a punch to the gut. "What do you want, John?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Power," he replied, his smile cold and calculated. "I'm not the only one. The people behind this, they've been waiting for you to fail." Sarah's world seemed to collapse around her. Her mind spun as she tried to process what John had just revealed. The trust she had built over years now felt like a lie. "Who are these people?" she demanded, her voice steadier than she felt. John crossed his arms, looking down at her with a sense of superiority. "You won't be able to stop them. They're already in control. They have the money, the influence, and they've been pulling your strings for months." He took a deep breath. "It was never just a leak, Sarah. It was a setup, and you've been too blind to see it." Sarah felt the ground beneath her shift. This was no longer just a corporate issue. It was a war for survival. "How do I stop them?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. John looked at her, his expression unreadable. "You can't. But if you want to try, I'll help. But it comes at a price." Back in her office, Sarah paced, trying to make sense of everything she had just learned. John's betrayal, the mysterious forces working behind the scenes, it was all too much. Her phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't a message. It was a call. Hesitantly, Sarah answered. "Sarah," a voice on the other end said. It was Rachel, her assistant. "There's something you need to see. It's urgent." Sarah's stomach churned. "What is it?" she demanded, her tone sharp. Rachel hesitated. "I can't explain over the phone. Just come to my office now." Without saying a word, Sarah hung up and grabbed her coat. She wasn't sure who to trust anymore, but Rachel had always been loyal. If there was anything that could shed light on this mess, it had to be now. When Sarah arrived at Rachel's office, she found her assistant pacing anxiously, holding a folder in her hands. "What is it?" Sarah asked, her voice tight. Rachel handed her the folder. "You need to see this." Inside were financial reports, internal memos, and an unsettling email thread. Sarah's eyes quickly scanned the documents, her heart racing. The emails were from an anonymous source, but they contained detailed plans to take down ApexTech. The emails linked several of her senior executives, people she trusted, to a shadow investor, a powerful figure pulling the strings behind the scenes. "They've been planning this for months," Sarah muttered, her voice barely audible. "They've been feeding information to the enemy." Rachel nodded. "I think this person is the one behind it all, the one you need to stop." Sarah clenched her fists. The enemy wasn't just inside her company, it was now everywhere. Sarah returned to her office, the weight of the documents she had just seen pressing heavily on her mind. The shadow investor, the emails implicating her closest allies. It all felt like a nightmare. She sat at her desk, staring at the walls that had once given her a sense of security, but now felt like a cage. Her phone rang again. It was a call she had been dreading, but she had no choice but to answer. "Sarah," the voice on the other end said, calm and collected. It was Natalie, the senior VP of operations. "We need to talk. You're not going to like what I have to say." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" she asked, her voice sharp. "I just received a report," Natalie continued, her tone grave. "There's a leak in our systems. Someone's been siphoning off data. It's not just about the AI project anymore. This goes deeper." The words hit Sarah like a blow to the chest. She had been betrayed at every turn. "Who's behind this?" she demanded. Natalie hesitated. "I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out." Sarah's mind raced as she processed the new information. Another leak? She had trusted so many people, and now it seemed like her empire was crumbling from the inside. She needed answers, and she needed them fast. She leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. The pressure was overwhelming, but she couldn't afford to break. "Get to the bottom of this, Natalie," she ordered, her voice firm. "And do it quickly." Natalie responded with a tone of agreement, but there was something in her voice that gave Sarah pause. "I will," Natalie said. "But Sarah, you need to be careful. There's more going on here than you realize." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I think you're being played, Sarah, and you're not the only one." Sarah didn't have time to process what Natalie had said. There was too much at stake. She hung up the phone and stood up, pacing her office as she thought about her next move. She needed to confront the people she had trusted most, but where would she even begin? Her assistant Rachel knocked softly before entering. "Sarah, you're going to want to see this," she said, holding out a tablet. Sarah looked at her perplexed. "What is it?" Rachel handed her the tablet, and Sarah's breath caught when she saw the screen. It was a video, a recording of a meeting, but the people in it weren't just anyone. It was John, Natalie, and several other senior executives, speaking in hushed tones. They were discussing the hostile takeover of ApexTech. The video was damning. "This is it," Sarah whispered, the full scope of the betrayal now laid bare. They had planned to take her down from the very start. Sarah stood frozen for a moment, the weight of the betrayal sinking in. She felt sick, dizzy, as though the ground beneath her feet was slipping away. The very people she had trusted, John, Natalie, the executives who had promised loyalty, were plotting behind her back. She turned to Rachel, her voice trembling with disbelief. "Why would they do this?" Rachel didn't answer immediately, her expression softening with empathy. "I don't know, Sarah, but we can't let them get away with it." Sarah's gaze hardened, the anger burning in her chest. "No," she said, her voice firm once again. "We're not just going to let this slide. We fight back. I won't go down without a fight." She paced for a moment, gathering her thoughts. "I'll need proof, hard evidence. I'm going to confront them, and I'm going to make them pay for this." Rachel nodded, determination in her eyes. "I'll help you, every step of the way." The next day, Sarah called an emergency meeting with the senior leadership team. As the executives gathered around the boardroom table, Sarah felt a wave of unease wash over her. She kept her expression neutral, but inside, her mind was racing. This was the moment. She needed to confront them, to make them realize that she knew everything. She stood at the head of the table, her eyes scanning the room. "We have a serious issue," she began, her voice steady but cold. "There's been a breach in the company's trust. A leak. But not just any leak. I know what's been going on. And I have proof. She watched as the executives exchanged nervous glances, their faces betraying their guilt. John, who was sitting at the far end of the table, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Sarah," he began, his voice shaky, "we can explain." "Save it, John," Sarah cut him off, her voice ice cold. "I've seen the video. I know everything." The room fell into stunned silence as Sarah dropped the bombshell. "You've been planning this for months. And now, it's time to pay the price." The room was thick with tension as Sarah stood before her senior leadership team. She could feel the weight of their eyes on her, each one calculating their next move, trying to gauge whether they were safe or exposed. John, the man who had once been her closest confidant, sat at the far end of the table, his face pale, his eyes shifting nervously. "I have no intention of letting this company fall," Sarah began, her voice cutting through the silence. "But I will not allow anyone here to undermine me, not again." Her words were sharp, each one laden with the weight of betrayal. "You've sold me out. You've sold out everything we've worked for," she continued, her gaze sweeping over the executives. "Now, you have one chance to come clean." John's jaw clenched, and for a moment he said nothing. Then, in a voice laced with anger, he spoke. "You think you can just come in here and take control, Sarah? You've lost touch with reality. This company was always going to move forward without you." Sarah's pulse quickened, but she didn't back down. "You've underestimated me, John," she said, her eyes cold and unyielding. "And now, you're going to pay for it." The silence in the room was suffocating as Sarah's words hung in the air. She had just accused John and the others of betrayal, and now it was time for them to face the consequences. "This company doesn't belong to you, John," Sarah said, her voice unwavering. "And I will not let you take it down with your selfish ambition." John sneered, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. "You think you can take me on, Sarah? I have the board behind me. I have the investors." Sarah's lips curled into a cold smile. "You think they'll back you when they see the proof? You think they'll stand by you when they realize the truth?" She turned to Natalie, her eyes blazing with resolve. "Show them." Natalie stepped forward, holding a folder with the incriminating emails. As she began to display the messages on the screen, Sarah could see John's face draining of color. The truth was coming to light. "I've already contacted our largest investors," Sarah continued, her voice steady. "They know exactly what's been going on, and you're not going to get away with it." The executives were visibly shaken, their fear palpable as they watched the screen reveal John's treachery. One by one their eyes shifted uneasily toward him. It was clear that the boardroom was no longer his domain. "This ends now," Sarah said, her voice cold and authoritative. "You've spent months undermining me, manipulating the board, feeding information to the enemy, and now you want to turn this company into your own personal empire. Well, I'm not going to let that happen." John stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You think you can just walk in here and take everything back?" he shouted. "I've done everything for this company. You wouldn't have even gotten this far without me." Sarah's gaze never wavered. "Maybe. But I didn't build this company on backstabbing and deceit. I built it on trust." She turned to the rest of the board. "And now we're going to rebuild it, without people like him." John opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He was defeated, exposed, and he knew it. After the confrontation, the room remained in an uneasy silence. The executives had all fallen in line, acknowledging Sarah's authority once more. John had been stripped of his power, but his defeat came at a cost. Sarah knew this wasn't the end. The damage had already been done, and there was still the looming presence of the shadow investor, the person pulling the strings from behind the scenes. "This isn't over," Sarah said, her voice filled with determination. "We've exposed John for the traitor he is, but there's someone else behind this. Someone who orchestrated this entire plan." Rachel, who had been standing by Sarah's side throughout the meeting, stepped forward. "I've been digging into the financials, Sarah," she said. "And I think I've found something. Someone has been funneling money out of the company in a way that's linked to the investors. They're using the chaos to take control." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "Who?" she asked. Rachel hesitated for a moment, then said, "It's him. The shadow investor." The name echoed in Sarah's mind like a threat. The shadow investor. The unseen force pulling the strings from the darkness. It all made sense now. The manipulation, the leaks, the betrayal. "We need to find out who this person is," Sarah said, her voice cutting through the silence. "And we need to do it fast." Natalie spoke up, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "But how? We've tried everything. This person is too good at covering their tracks." Sarah's eyes hardened with resolve. "Then we need to dig deeper. Every financial transaction, every email, every phone call. I want this person exposed. I don't care how long it takes." She paused for a moment, her gaze sweeping across the room. "This is our company. We're not going to let anyone steal it from us." As she spoke, the resolve in her voice burned through the room. The fight wasn't over, and she wasn't going to back down now. "We'll find them," Sarah whispered. "And when we do, we'll take them down." The investigation into the shadow investor intensified as Sarah and her team dug deeper into the company's financials. Late nights in the office had become routine, and the weight of the mystery was beginning to feel unbearable. Rachel and Natalie worked tirelessly alongside Sarah, sifting through every piece of data, every financial statement, every transaction that might lead them to the faceless enemy pulling the strings. "We're getting closer," Rachel said one evening, her eyes scanning the latest report. "There's a pattern here. The shadow investor isn't just manipulating the stock. They're using offshore accounts to funnel money through shell companies." Sarah stood behind her, her arms crossed. "Who's behind those shell companies?" she asked, her voice tight with anticipation. Rachel paused, eyes scanning the screen. "The names are all registered under anonymous trusts. But one name keeps popping up as a key player. The person who set up the trusts. It's Jonathan Hale." The name hit Sarah like a bolt of lightning. Jonathan Hale was a former investor in the company, someone who had been quietly pushed out years ago after a power struggle. But what Sarah didn't know was how far Hale's influence had reached. The revelation hit Sarah like a freight train. Jonathan Hale. Of course. He was the missing link, the person who had been quietly manipulating events from the shadows. He had been ousted from ApexTech years ago, but Sarah never suspected he would turn on the company so brutally. Hale had always been a calculating, ruthless investor, but to orchestrate her downfall from the shadows, this was a level of manipulation Sarah hadn't expected. "We need to find him," Sarah said, her voice seething with anger. "Now." Natalie, who had been sitting at the table, looked up at her, her face grim. "Finding Hale won't be easy. He's gone off the grid, but he's still pulling the strings. We'll need a plan." Sarah didn't hesitate. "Get the team ready. We're going after him. This ends now." The fire in her eyes was unmistakable. Sarah Donovan was done playing defense. Now, it was time to go on the offensive. The next day, Sarah met with her private investigator, Ethan, in a dimly lit bar just off the beaten path. Ethan had been in the business long enough to know how to find people who didn't want to be found. "Hale's not a ghost," Ethan said, sliding into the booth across from Sarah. "But he's careful. Too careful." Sarah leaned forward, her eyes burning with determination. "I don't care how you do it, but I want him found. Now." Ethan studied her for a moment, then nodded. "I'll need access to company records, employee lists, anything that ties him to ApexTech or any of the executives." Sarah didn't hesitate. "You'll get whatever you need." As Ethan left the bar, Sarah's mind raced. Hale was the key to everything. If she could take him down, she could dismantle the conspiracy and regain control of the company. But first, she needed to find him. And fast. Days passed as Sarah continued to pull strings from within the company, working tirelessly with her team to uncover every last detail about Hale's movements. They discovered that Hale had been using a network of offshore accounts, funneling ApexTech's profits into various secretive ventures. But what Sarah didn't expect was how close Hale was to the heart of the company. The more they dug, the more they realized that Hale wasn't just trying to take ApexTech down. He was attempting a hostile takeover from the inside out. As Sarah sat at her desk, staring at the growing pile of evidence, she felt a surge of rage and betrayal. This ends now, she muttered under her breath. It was time to confront Hale directly, but she knew this would be a fight to the death. Either she stopped him now, or he would destroy everything she had built. The night was quiet as Sarah and her team set their plan into motion. Ethan had tracked Hale to a private residence just outside the city, a mansion that was hidden behind a heavily guarded gate. "This is it," Ethan said, speaking in low tones as he relayed the information to Sarah. "This is where he's been staying." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. This was her chance. It was time to confront Hale, to end this game once and for all. She turned to Rachel and Natalie, her voice calm but filled with urgency. "We go in fast. We get the evidence and we take him down. No more delays." The team moved with precision, each of them knowing what was at stake. As they approached the mansion, Sarah's heart raced. She could feel the culmination of everything she had fought for, the betrayal, the heartbreak, and the fear, all boiling down to this moment. "This ends tonight," Sarah whispered to herself. Sarah stood at the edge of the estate's expansive grounds, the mansion looming in front of her like a fortress. The cold night air nipped at her skin, but she hardly noticed. She had come too far to let fear hold her back now. "This is it," she said under her breath. "Tonight, it all ends." Ethan, standing by her side, checked his equipment one last time, his face stoic but alert. "We'll take him down tonight, Sarah. No more games." Sarah nodded, steeling herself for what was to come. The team was ready. They had everything they needed, proof of Hale's betrayal, his hidden accounts, the evidence that would expose him for good. As they moved closer to the mansion, a sense of purpose filled her chest. But there was one thing she couldn't shake: how deep Hale's influence ran. Was this just about the company? Or had Hale been plotting something even bigger all along? "We need to be quick," Sarah said, glancing back at Rachel and Natalie. "In and out. Fast. We don't know who else Hale's involved with, and I'm not taking any chances." They approached the mansion's front door, which was guarded by 2 security personnel, but the team had already planned their moves. The security was tighter than expected, but Sarah and her team had anticipated every move. With a few swift, silent maneuvers, they neutralized the guards without a sound. Sarah's mind raced as she led them through the mansion's grand entrance, her every step purposeful. "Hale's office is on the 2nd floor," Ethan whispered, leading the way. "We get to him before he knows what hit him." Sarah nodded, her expression unwavering. As they ascended the staircase, the silence around them felt oppressive, each creak of the old wood echoing like a warning. "Stay sharp," she said, her voice low. "This man is dangerous, and we have no idea how many people he's working with. Don't take any risks." The air felt thick, as if the mansion itself was holding its breath. Every corner they turned, every room they passed, Sarah felt the weight of betrayal bearing down on her. She was close, she could feel it. And with each step, the promise of reclaiming her company became more tangible. They reached the 2nd floor, and as Sarah pushed open the door to Hale's office, she was hit with the unmistakable sense of finality. The office was pristine, filled with the kinds of lavish items Sarah had once associated with success. Now, they felt like symbols of greed. Hale was sitting at his desk, unaware of the intrusion. "Jonathan Hale," Sarah said, her voice steady but laced with fury. He looked up, a slow smile curling across his face as he realized who had come to confront him. "I wondered how long it would take you to find me," he said, his voice smooth, almost mocking. "But it's too late, Sarah. The wheels are already in motion." Sarah's eyes hardened. "The wheels are about to come off, Jonathan. This ends tonight." Hale stood up slowly, his eyes narrowing. "You think you can stop this? You don't have the power anymore. This company belongs to me now, and there's nothing you can do to change that." His arrogance was infuriating, but Sarah wasn't swayed. "You've made a grave mistake, and I'm here to make sure you pay for it." The standoff continued, with both Sarah and Hale locked in a silent battle of wills. The cold, calculating look in Hale's eyes never wavered, but Sarah could see the faintest tremor in his hand as he reached for the desk drawer. "You've underestimated me, Sarah," Hale said, his voice now tinged with desperation. You think you can take everything from me? I'll burn this company to the ground before I let you win. Sarah took a step forward, her voice low but firm. You've already lost, Hale. The investors, the board, they know what you've been doing. You're finished. Hale's eyes widened for a moment, and then his expression darkened. You think this is over? This is just the beginning, Sarah. You've sealed your own fate. With a sudden movement, Hale slammed open the desk drawer, pulling out a small pistol. But before he could make a move, Sarah was faster. You don't get to control this anymore, she said, stepping forward and knocking the gun from his hand. The weapon skidded across the floor, far out of his reach. You're done. Hale stood frozen for a moment, his eyes filled with rage and disbelief. Sarah took a deep breath, her anger simmering beneath the surface. You thought you could play God with this company, Hale, she said, her voice calm but cutting. But you've underestimated me at every turn. Hale, defeated but not yet broken, finally dropped his shoulders, his facade crumbling. You don't get it, Sarah, he said, his voice quieter now. I've already won. Even if you expose me, it's too late. Sarah's eyes narrowed. Not if I have anything to say about it, she replied. With a single motion, she pulled out her phone and hit send. I just sent everything to the board, the investors, the press. Your game is over. Hale's face twisted in fury as he lunged forward, but the team was already moving in to restrain him. You're done, Sarah said one last time, as Hale was led out of the room in handcuffs. She turned to her team, her face hardening with resolve. We've won, but we have to rebuild, and we do it without people like him. With Hale in custody, the aftermath of the confrontation left Sarah feeling both victorious and exhausted. The board had been informed, the evidence was out in the open, and the shadow investors' reign was over. But there was more work ahead. We've taken him down, but the company is still reeling, Rachel said, sitting next to Sarah. What's next? Sarah took a deep breath, staring out over the city skyline. We rebuild. We clean up the mess and regain trust. It won't be easy, but it's the only way forward. The weight of the challenge hung heavy in the air, but Sarah's resolve was unshaken. We'll make ApexTech stronger than it ever was. The days following Hale's arrest were filled with meetings, legal procedures, and strategic decisions. Sarah worked tirelessly to regain control of the company's image. The press had been brutal, but now there was a sense of hope. The board is behind you, Natalie said in one meeting, and the investors are cautiously optimistic. Sarah nodded, but her eyes remained focused on the documents in front of her. I fought for this company. I'm not going to let a few setbacks define us. She looked up, determination in her eyes. We're going to make ApexTech not just survive. We're going to thrive. Weeks passed, and Sarah's efforts to rebuild ApexTech began to bear fruit. The company was slowly recovering from the internal sabotage, and public trust was starting to return. One day, as Sarah reviewed new reports, she received a call. We've secured the investors, Rachel said, and the board unanimously supports you. Sarah felt a wave of relief. The fight wasn't over, but the worst was behind them. Thank you, Rachel, she said quietly, her voice filled with gratitude. This is just the beginning. A final meeting with the board sealed Sarah's victory. The company was officially on the path to recovery, and Sarah had proven herself as a leader who could rise above betrayal. I'm proud of what we've accomplished, Sarah said to the board members. But there's still a lot of work to do. We're going to make ApexTech a leader once more. As Sarah left the boardroom, she could finally breathe easy. The road ahead was long, but she had proven that she had the strength to lead. This is just the start, she whispered to herself. As Sarah walked away from the boardroom, a feeling of triumph mixed with exhaustion washed over her. She had won the battle, but the scars of betrayal still lingered. We've made it, Rachel said, walking alongside her. You did it, Sarah. Sarah smiled faintly, looking out over the city once more. It's not over, Rachel. But I'm ready for whatever comes next. The future was uncertain, but Sarah knew one thing: she would never back down. No matter what came next, She was ready.